Sophia did not ruin her chances of marriage on the day she rejected another man. She ruined them on a much quieter day, one without witnesses, when she perfected a man who could not breathe, age, disappoint, or arrive. By the time she understood the difference between standards and illusion, years had already hardened into memory, and imagination had outlived opportunity. Sophia grew up in a home where love was spoken of carefully. Her mother had married young, not out of romance but out of necessity, and had learned early how compromise could keep a household standing even when happiness wavered. From her mother, Sophia inherited resilience, discipline, and a quiet fear of settling into regret. She watched her mother move through life with competence rather than joy, carrying responsibility like a second spine, and promised herself that her own story would be different. Her sisters grew up watching her with admiration. She was the beautiful one, the composed one, the one who seemed destined for something exceptional. When suitors came calling, they whispered among themselves that Sophia was selective because she could afford to be. They believed her patience was power. Sophia believed it too. She learned early to trust her mind more than chance. She believed that clarity was protection, that if she could define exactly what she wanted, life would have no excuse to disappoint her. When she listened to stories of marriages that sounded too chaotic to envy, she promised herself she would do better. She would choose carefully. She would not rush into a future she might regret. From the outside, her life looked intentional and even admirable because she kept reiterating that marriage was a destination that required careful mapping. And she was right. And so, in the privacy of her thoughts, she began to build. The man began as an idea. The man she would marry had to be tall, not merely taller than her, but tall enough to make her feel held by his presence. He had to be handsome in a way that endured, not the kind that faded into familiarity, but the kind of face that made admiration feel inevitable rather than forced. He had to be wealthy enough to insulate life from struggle, from the kind of hardship she had watched her mother endure quietly. His confidence would be effortless, his authority unquestioned, his future already arranged before she arrived. With him, she imagined, life would finally feel complete. At first, the image felt harmless, it even felt motivating. It gave her direction. It made rejection feel responsible rather than cruel. When men approached her with sincerity but imperfect offerings, she turned them away gently, assured that patience was wisdom. Her friends often wondered if Sophia was too careful, but they said nothing. Many of them were already married, navigating the exhaustion of compromise, the quiet disappointment of dreams adjusted downward. Some envied Sophia's freedom. Others feared it on her behalf. But Sophia remained certain. As years passed, the image of the man grew sharper. What had once been preference hardened into requirement. Every man who entered her life was measured silently against a standard he never knew existed. Some were kind but lacked ambition. Some were ambitious but lacked refinement. Some offered loyalty without security, affection without assurance. None survived comparison. Time moved quietly around her. Her birthdays came and went. Her friends married, but their weddings felt distant, like scenes from another version of life. Sophia attended these celebrations beautifully dressed, smiling easily, carrying herself like someone who knew exactly where she was going. When relatives asked about her plans, her mother answered for her with calm confidence, trusting her daughter's judgment even when worry sat quietly in her chest. But worry grows in silence. Sophia's mother began to notice how the questions changed. They were no longer curious, but cautious. Concern disguised itself as advice. She wondered if her daughter's standards were protecting her or isolating her, but she remembered her own compromises too well to interfere openly. Her sisters noticed too. They saw how attention followed them now in ways it no longer followed Sophia. They felt guilt for it, and fear. What had once felt like admiration began to feel like a warning. Sophia noticed none of this directly. She only noticed that the world felt quieter. The men who once appeared frequently to ask her out became fewer. Invitations softened. Compliments grew respectful rather than eager. Sophia still recognized herself in the mirror. She still saw beauty and composure, but she did not see how the world had begun to adjust its gaze. Time had begun to speak for her. Still, the man in her mind did not change. He did not age. He did not compromise. The man waited in her mind in perfection, preserved by imagination. One evening, alone with the sound of her own breathing, Sophia felt the silence settle differently. Not lonely enough to break her, but heavy enough to disturb her peace. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider a thought she had long avoided. She was now 37 years old. What if the man she built was never meant to be found? The thought unsettled her more than solitude ever had. From that moment, something shifted. Sophia began to look at men differently. Where she once evaluated presence, she now noticed availability. Where wealth had once been non-negotiable, stability became acceptable. Where attraction had once been essential, comfort began to suffice. She told herself she was growing. But beneath this language of maturity lived resentment. She resented the years that had taught her compromise. She resented the past version of herself who had been so certain, so unyielding. She resented the invisible clock now governing her decisions. Her friends sensed the change. They saw how Sophia's laughter carried less conviction, and how her confidence required more effort. They encouraged her gently, hoping she would not become a cautionary tale whispered about during late-night conversations. Her mother prayed quietly. When a man finally appeared who fit enough of Sophia's revised expectations, she did not hesitate. He was not the man she had imagined, but he was present. He was not exceptional, but he was willing. His interest was steady, his intentions unmistakable. The steadiness was what mattered. Sophia leaned into it quickly, convincing herself that love grows, that passion fades anyway, that companionship is the true reward. She told herself that stories of great romance were myths told by people who had never endured real life. Her family responded with relief. Approval followed swiftly, almost eagerly, as though her decision restored balance to a narrative that had stretched too long. Her mother slept easier and her sister smiled without fear. Sophia told herself she felt relief too. But relief is not fulfillment. As marriage settled into her life, something remained unresolved. From the outside, her life looked complete. Stable. Respectable. She fulfilled her responsibilities, maintained harmony, carried herself with grace. Yet inside, questions lingered. Sophia realized she had chosen not from abundance, but from fear. Fear of solitude. Fear of irrelevance. Fear of time winning entirely. She wondered whether love born of fear could ever become genuine, or whether it would always carry the faint taste of surrender. She discovered that peace could coexist with quiet dissatisfaction, that stability could feel heavy when it arrived too late. The man she had built returned in her thoughts, unchanged, unaging, silent. The man did not accuse her. His presence alone was enough to reopen questions she had buried. She understood then that compromise does not erase desire. It only buries it. And buried things do not disappear. Sophia began to see similar compromises everywhere. In friends who spoke of marriage with forced gratitude. In relatives who advised endurance rather than joy. In her mother's quiet strength, which she now recognized as both admirable and costly. She wondered if her earlier self had been foolish or brave, whether her refusal to settle had been arrogance or integrity, whether her eventual surrender was wisdom or defeat. The answers shifted depending on the day. In the end, Sophia married a man, but she never divorced the one she created in her mind. And somewhere between those two lives, she learned a truth that offered only clarity but no comfort. Some people lose love because they ask for too much. Others lose love because they accept too little. Most lose it because they never truly knew which version of themselves deserved to choose. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to discover more of our stories.